Hi everybody, Jeremy Siskind here, the author of Solo Standards for Piano. Did I say that weird? Solo Standards for Piano. The Jazz Piano Fundamentals series, playing solo jazz piano, and more of the Jazz Piano Fundamentals series. I want to talk with you today about something that I've noticed from a lot of experience teaching, and I bet for many of you, you've noticed it as well. So let's just set the scene here that one of the things that we really want for ourselves as jazz musicians and as teachers for our students is we want you at some level playing what you hear, right? You probably noticed that a lot of the great jazz pianists, for instance, sing along with what they play. Or I could probably better say that they play along with what they sing. And we're going to talk a lot about kind of that distinction today. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I bet this rings true for many people, is that for those many of us who do not have perfect pitch, people get very disgruntled, distracted, and have a hard time detaching from the sense that they're not playing the pitches that they're singing or that they're hearing, right? And it doesn't make any sense to me to wait until you can perfectly replicate every single idea that you might have in your head before you start to form a connection. So I want to show you a little modification to some of the most common ear training advice and most common ear training exercises that we do at the piano or for any other instrument. And then I'll show you some other ways about going about getting that connection between ear and instrument without worrying so much about pitch. Okay, so here's one typical exercise, and I'm not knocking this. This is actually in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 1, or some version of this. Let's do it as a drone improvisation, meaning that I'm just going to play C and G. I'm just going to play a constant sound in a lower octave. Let's bring this camera down so I'm not just a floating head. Perfect. And I'm going to sing something, and then I'm going to play it back. And maybe I'll play it right. Or let's say hypothetically I'll play it wrong. And what happens when somebody plays it wrong? They stop and they're picking out each individual pitch. And this just robs it of any kind of musicality that it has, right? Because the musicality isn't in the pitches. The pitches help. The musicality is in the phrasing, the rhythm, the articulation, all those other musical aspects, right? If I sing do de do 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 and I play or to me that's such a win. Like that's still a huge connection between what you're hearing in your head and what you're playing. Again, we should aspire to play at the same pitches, but it might be a long journey to get there. So, how can we de-train ourselves? That is not a word. De-orient ourselves or reorient ourselves away from what I call pitch supremacy, right? What is pitch supremacy? Pitch is this idea that the notes are the most important thing and almost the only thing. And if we don't have the notes, everything else has to wait. And I think that is not true, but I think that 95% of music students are oriented that way. One thing that we do, and I want to give Grace Kelly, the saxophonist, credit for this, is we can tap on the top of the keys as a middle step between singing and playing. And so I would, you could do this on any instrument. On the piano, I'm going to kind of pretend like I'm playing without pressing down the keys. Why would this help? Well, here we can imagine just how we want the phrase to sound without thinking, oh God, that first note was wrong. I need to cancel everything else, right? Here we're going to get the rhythm, the shape of the phrase, the articulation, the phrasing, that we have all those good things up in our head without thinking, oh, wrong note, I need to start again. So if I sing, be-ba-be-doo-dum, then I'm going to put my hand somewhere random, boo-ba-be-doo-dum, okay? And notice I'm singing it again while I play, boo-da-be-doo-dum, so that I get the right rhythm, the right articulation, and the right shape, right? When I say shape, I mean that, it starts middle, high, back to the first note, and then down, down, right? Do-do-be-do-dum. And so now you've got the whole phrase under your fingers. And what I would recommend here is that now you play it with absolute conviction, no stopping, no second guessing. I've purposely done this wrong. Okay, but I played it the whole way through, just as I fingered it. And now I can tell it's not right. But I've still got the good parts, right? I've still got, like I keep saying, I know I sound like a broken record, the rhythm, the shape, the articulation. Let's do a couple more. I'm gonna put my hand somewhere in the wrong place. And play it with conviction. And I'm doing a little dua, and I'll add a grace note. Okay, did I play the right notes? I purposely did not. But my articulation, my shape, and my little grace note is good. How about daddy do ba do do, gabba do do ba do do, ba do 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 do. I'm gonna put my hand somewhere random. Ba do 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 do. And here I have to figure out the fingering too. Ba do do ba do boom. 2, 3, 4. Right. Again, purposefully. Right now, not the right notes, but I'm playing it with conviction. And that phrase is just as good as... Now, if you're going to go and do this over chord changes, you might want to connect with your theory a little bit. So, if I'm going to practice this next over a 2-5, there's a couple things that we could do here. One is that we could just totally freely. And now when I go to put my hand down, I'm going to try to put it somewhere that's going to reflect those chords. I'm going to put it in the wrong place again, but I'm going to put it over a D minor 7 arpeggio. That wasn't the same thing I sung. I sung be-ba-be-do-do. But again, I'll tap first. How about okay. So again, I'm not going to put my hand somewhere random. Now I'm going to think about outlining a D minor 7 chord. So I've got my fingers on D, F, and A. It's not correct, purposely. I'm gonna really get that articulation. It'd be nice with a little slide in there, so I'll do a grace note. And then when I go to play it, I play the whole phrase, even if it's quote unquote wrong. So that's one way you could do it, thinking, okay, I'm gonna use my knowledge of D minor 7. And first of all, I'm gonna make sure I'm playing on all the white keys. And then if it's more of an arpeggio, more skips, I'm gonna be around F, D, F, A, F, A, C, E, maybe C, E, G. And then when I resolve to my G7, I'm gonna use my knowledge of the G7, right? Same thing, if I'm doing this in a different key, maybe I'm gonna do it in E flat major. So I've got a F minor 7 to a B flat 7 for the 2-5. Okay, so that one was more scalar, but now I'm going to think about the F Dorian or the E flat major scale. Bo-do, bo-do, ba-da-bo. So, bo-do, 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 ba-da-do. Bo-do, bo-do, ba-do. Trying to really get the articulation. Bo-do, bo-do, ba-do-ah. So, of course, you have to know the appropriate scale or arpeggio. Now, the other way to do it would be to kind of prompt yourself, maybe with a guide tone line. So, if I'm back on D minor 7, G7, maybe I'll try to get myself to sing something around those two notes. C, the 7th of the D minor leading to B, the 3rd of the G7. Dub, dub, do, be, do, ba, do, do, down. So now my fingers kind of know where to go. Da da do be do boo ba do ah. Do 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 be do do da do da. Now I've got a higher percentage. Or bo bo do bo bo ba ba. I'm gonna do this one wrong on purpose. But because that guide tone line's so strong, it still sounds pretty good, right? Dub, 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 be, dub, dub, ba. Da, da, dub. I'm reminding myself that I should sing while I play on the key taps. Do, 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 be, do, be, be, bo. And then lastly, you could do the same thing with a jazz solo, right? So there's a lot of room between transcribing, writing down every note, and just observing, listening passively. One thing that you could do is you could take one phrase of a solo and see if you could do the same exercise. So for instance, I taught on this channel Louis Armstrong's solo on Potato Head Blues. And it starts da 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 bo do do bo bo do ba da da da. Okay, do 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 bo do do bo 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 ba da da da. So you learn to sing that, and then you might know what key it's in, you might not. Let's pretend that you don't, and you're gonna practice it in C major. Do 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 do. Sounds like a lot of arpeggios. So I'm going to get my hand around a C major arpeggio. Da 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 bo bo do do bo do do bo bo do ba da da da. One more time for the articulation. Bo da ba bo do do bo bo do ba da da da. And then I'll try playing it. This is gonna be way wrong, not even the right key. That's totally cool. We're practicing the pitches, sure, but the articulation, the shape, the rhythm. Okay. All right. I think that's a good place to leave it. I know this has been kind of an unusual lesson for this channel, but I think it's a really important one. If you like this kind of thing, definitely check out the Jazz Piano Fundamentals series. There's some interesting ear training exercises in there, as well as just some basic improvisation exercises in order to get you started improvising. Knowing what kind of shapes your hand should take. When you start improvising over a 2-5 progression or a 2-5-1 progression. If you made it this far, say something about supremacy, because I'm talking about pitch supremacy here. Let's keep it apolitical, please. Bye, everybody.